I just have a spinning beach ball. Okay, we're live. Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. It is 11:33 a.m. on Wednesday, miércoles, Mercury's Day, and therefore time for StarryTelling Hour. Usually hours. It's not going to be like that right now. I am creating beautiful illustrations and animations to teach time and space for a course that's currently underway, The Cosmic Keys of the Heavenly Houses. Class 3 out of 5 happens tomorrow. Many of you are enrolled, so I will see you then. If you're not, you missed this particular solar boat, well, it will be on my website at geminibread.com and a few moons from now. But it's also like it's been an opportunity for me to kind of gather thought and update many of my illustrations, animations through which I teach in preparation for Earth Astrology Year 1, which will be coming soon to a theater called You. I'm really excited about that, spending some time with first the planets and Sacred Geometry 101, and then to the signs and to the zodiacs and the turning of the ages, and then to aspects, relations, geometries, and then to houses. And then in year 2, we'll get more into the nitty gritty. And bring in more and more of the old school, not only like from traditional astrology and the Hellenistic tradition, but the oldest school there is, which is always available to us in any moment, which is just a direct connection with the living sky, Earth astrology. So it's been a long time coming for me to kind of find formulations for how to bring astrologers either from wherever they are to where they want to go, including if that's like brand new to the cosmic curriculum. So it's been a really wonderful time for me to kind of align my own, I guess, vision with what's happening, but to see kind of the land through the vision. And that's actually what I wanted to speak about with you today. I was thinking about getting into, probably I should have last week, should have, could have, would have, but into the Aries eclipse chart. It's pretty serious, and I think we're feeling it. I've really seen clients this week and my relations outside of my service as well, just really having a hard time with the madness of the world, and quite appropriately so. I'm intrigued to see the eclipse map for Myanmar, such terrible devastation that happened there just before the solar eclipse. And there's some interesting symbolism, but I'm going to get into the eclipse chart, the solar eclipse chart. Eclipse of the sun on Sunday, with those of you like Ellie and Kat and Dawn who are in the Constellations group. You, if you're not, can be. Constellations is the School of Earth Astrology's membership community. It's beautiful. It's also about to undergo significant change. There's going to be some eclipsing and some new light, and I'm really excited for my beloved, my dear partner, Scorpiana, to start participating much more in the constellations space. This Sunday she cannot because we don't have help with our baby. So maybe we'll trade off a little bit. But we have some visions for teaming up more, partnering up more in our works too, moving forward, because Anna's recently committed full-time to coaching and to astrological counsel. So I'm excited to be able to spend more time in our partnership outside of the house as well. So this Sunday, Anna will not be there, but many of you stars and constellations will be. If you don't know about constellations, just go to geminibrett.com/constellations. I will put that link in the chat here. And for $16 a month or $160 a year, you have access to classes that I only teach in that space. And we've had amazing other teachers as well over this last year. Amala Hall, who's been sharing plant and planet astroherbalism correspondences with us through the signs. Alyssa Luna, who's been bringing amazing astro embodiment practices through the signs, and Phelan Shiva, who's been running an astro tarot gathering there in constellations as well. And yeah, things are going to shift a bit this year, and I'm really excited to start teaching like astronomical essentials, something I've been wanting to update in my teachings and kind of get together. And constellations is going to be a space where I get to share that. And then a beautiful thing about constellations is we just gather and have meetings of the mind, and so many wise folks, like many of you who are here for StarryTelling Hour right now, like Diane, spend time in constellations. And so I get to learn so much. So we have classes, exclusive classes in there. When you join, by the way, you can access all the classes that have already happened. So you can spend $16, join for a month, and literally access hundreds of hours of amazing astrological teachings. But we also have not recorded community discussion sessions regularly, where we get to connect and share dream and heart. And I'm not at a lot of those, but I hear they're great. And then I lead a group on Saturday. For those of you who in constellations, same thing this Saturday, though. You're welcome to join if you'd like, but the content is going to be addressing the Q&A and then having a discussion around tomorrow's teaching for the Heavenly Houses group. Okay, all that not great TV for people who are looking back at this from a time that I currently perceive to be the future. But I wanted to speak a bit about perceptions and time and such right now, because I've been waiting for the metaphor, the updated metaphor of Saturn and Neptune to come to me. And it did in a session earlier today. So I wanted to test it with you all. And then, like Neptune, I will disappear so I can bring my beautiful Scorpiana and our baby to a meeting, a tea gathering. So just a short one here today. And I'm so interested, as we all are, those of us who follow the charts and the stars, in this just gathering at the Pisces Aries cusp. And I'm talking tropical zodiac, Earth zodiac. And I will just say, you hear me say it all the time, that like so many sacred systems of ancient wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac is directionally aligned. I would suggest its signs are directionally defined. And the Pisces Aries cusp of the tropical zodiac is such an important point. This point that hosts the east equinox sun, such an important point because it is due east of the center of Earth. It is here. It is the point in the heavens where the plane of year, the sun's path, the heart of the zodiac, for the most part, since our solar system is relatively flat, the path of the planets in our sky, the ecliptic plane, it's the place where the ecliptic passes over, crosses the equator, which is the plane of the day, right? So there are many zodiacal cosmologies, most popularly constellational, sidereal, or of the stars, and tropical, of the tropics, which is Greek, from the Greek tropikos for turnaround, right? Because we have the northern extreme, and then we stop and turn around and come south, stop and turn around and go north. And the tropics are the points of the sun's path to which Earth's North Pole and South Pole eternally lean. right? So north, south. And because there's a global north and south, there's also a global east and west. It's a little bit more confusing. Like north is north everywhere on Earth. That's Santa's place, you may know. And above Santa's zone is Polaris, North Star, right? But global east is a little bit more confusing because, in Brighton, England right now, there's a very different east and a very different rising sign than what I'm experiencing here in California in this moment, right? But I'm talking about from the center of the earth, from that one place we all connect, right? And from that point, there are also global directions, and the direction east is this place where the plane of the year crosses over the plane of the day. Only the tropical zodiac of those mentioned before, constellational, sidereal, only the tropical zodiac utilizes this directional truth, and also utilizes both the ecliptic, the path of the sun, and for the most part, that of the planets, and the equator, right? Which is the plane of the day, the plane of Earth's daily rotation, and the place where the sun is on the cross at Easter time. That's this point in question right now. Now, I should say that Easter comes late in the calendar year of 2025, because the new way to calculate Easter, which is kind of cool, is the Sunday after the full moon, after East equinox time. And why is that cool? Because you get like a few different astronomical and symbolic traditions combined. Astronomical, because the East equinox is all about the astronomy of the sun reaching the east point, this place where the sun's path crosses the plane of the day, right? I call it the circle of spirit and the circle of matter, right? So that's the sun on the cross, Easter, where this ecliptic passes over the equator, Passover, right? So Easter equinox there, but then we wait for the full moon. So the equinox sun, that's Earth sun, full moon, Earth moon sun. And then of course it has to be a Sunday because that's a solar cult. Oh, sorry, it's not how you're supposed to say it. That's solar worship. Sorry. It's something about the sun and the sky. It's something about the son of man. Right, so it's got to be on a Sunday. Right, so that's more symbolic time, magical time, the 7 days of the week, named for the visible lights who wander through the backdrop of the fixed stars, and those, of course, sun, moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, if we name them in a strange order that corresponds with the days of the week: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Saturn's day, and then Sunday, the day of the sun, right? So Easter, like the new way to do it's pretty cool, but I would just suggest Easter tells us what it's about, right? And we know that term likely is sourced from Ostera, some call it, but this is from Istra, or some say Ustra, who is like a Germanic goddess of the east, of the dawn, eastern sky, or maybe back from Ishtar, right, who you may know from the Sumerian name Inanna, Venus, but in Babylon, Ishtar. So Inanna, who now is morning star. Have you made eyes yet with Venus reborn in the sunrise east? Maya and Anna and I just got to see Venus yesterday for the first time. It's been stormy here, and a couple times I went out earlier. It's just too much hills and trees, but we saw Venus right from our one Easter-ish facing window just the other day, and what a sight to behold. And so Venus reborn so beautifully, Venus lying between Earth and Sun, pretty close to the East equinox day. And I first saw Venus with my own eyes now that she has retrograded back into the Pisces sign, right? And this is happening as well as happened for Mercury, right? Both Venus and Mercury into Aries, retrograde back into Pisces. and they will go direct and back into Aries. So this crossing of the east point, right? Because this point is due east of the center of the earth, that place deep beneath our feet, the heart of Gaia, where we are all one. It works like a global ascendant. And that's why it's particularly interesting through Earth's third motion, or the axial precession, to track where that point is in the stars or in the sidereal signs. And that's one of the astronomical mechanisms for the turning of the ages. Great mysteries are revealed, though, if you look actually towards the north and the south points. To tale for another time, but this global ascendant, this zero Aries of Earth's zodiac, the tropical zodiac, right, is such an important place because it's like a global ascendant, right? And east is like the energy of beginnings, right? So astrologers, at least tropical astrologers, are not the only ones who start, or I should say many of us begin the year when the sun is at zero tropical Aries. Many astronomers see that at the beginning of the year as well, right? When we talk about the beginning of the year, like which point of the circle, of the circumference of the circle, is the beginning of the circumference of the circle? And the answer is all of them. That's like the beauty of circle. So some might go seasonally in that regard, and so many will say, well, this is because it's the vernal equinox. Well, that's an entirely hemispheric thing to say, isn't it? Because as the northern hemisphere springs, the southern hemisphere falls, and of course the opposite is true on the opposite side of the year. One thing we all share around this time is equal days and equal nights. But this point, when we think of it globally, its key is that it is east. It is the east point. So Easter, Ishtar, Esther as well. You know, those who know about Purim, right? That's like also east equinox time. Esther. I digress. So Venus, Mercury. Why don't we put some dates to this thing? Present. Share screen. Just show them the whole thing. A Brett inside a Brett inside a Brett inside a Brett. Cool. This here's now. Happy day after April Fools, with the out of bounds Gemini moon applying to Jupiter and carrying the light of the sun, who she has just recently sextiled for all of us. And well, at 11:51:14 a.m. we have Cancer rising where I reside. Of course, that's not true across the pond, and we're going to push this zero Aries wheel thing to bring in this directionally aligned so-called natural zodiac. That will be a little bit more of a global thing. All right, let's just rewind. Let's go back like a month, and we'll see all of these beings in Pisces. Venus, we got to get back even a month before them. So here's Venus in Pisces, and we get Venus entering Aries. And then as evening star on February 3rd, Mercury crossing that Pisces Aries cusp, that east point. Here on March 3rd, a month later, after Venus had already stationed retrograde, indicated by the red font here in Astro Gold astrology software. Mercury has since stationed retrograde as well, and that was here on Pi Day, which is so fun because there are pi Mercury sun cycles a year, like 3.14 or 22 cycles in 7 years. Only Mercury, right? Well, look at where Neptune was at this time. And maybe we should even rewind, because before the February and March crossings of Venus and then Mercury, on January 11th, 2025, we had the true lunar node moonwalk, or go backwards from zero Aries to 29, 59, 59, 59, 59 Pisces at this point, which is like the beginning of the end of the beginning of the end of the beginning again. All right. So January 11th, 25, let's say January North Node across the East Point. February, Venus across the east point. March, Mercury marches across the east point. March, Neptune across the east point. But look at where Mercury and Venus are, okay? So rewind, we'll show that Venus came back from Aries across the east point to Pisces on March 27th. And then Mercury follows her there. Who wouldn't want to? Maybe Mercury. But that's March 29th, right? And you just see this great gathering of node, Venus, Neptune, Mercury, Saturn nearby, right? Well, Neptune then crosses over, as we saw. That's on March 30th, just a few days ago. This is the big deal, right? Like Neptune has been in Pisces, committed to Pisces since 2012. And let me just push this button again. So, because I'm going to show you that here's Neptune crossing from Pisces into Aries on March 30th, but then from Aries back to Pisces on October 22nd, and finally committing to Aries on January 26, 2026, Neptune into Aries, and there in Aries until a Taurus ingress all the way in 2038, okay? But wait, there's more. Of course, we will have Mercury stationing direct. That's April 7th. And Venus stationing direct. That is April 12th. And then Mercury will head back into Aries, so back across the cusp. And that is April 15th. Venus getting past Saturn and heading back into Aries on April 30th. And then finally, Saturn crosses too. That's May 24th. Right? Saturn's actually going to come back into Pisces September 1st before Neptune does on October 22nd. And then they both station direct, and Saturn and Neptune will finally meet in this first degree of Aries in 2026, right? So Saturn back in on February 13th. I wonder if I can bring up for you a slide that I created some time ago. Where would this be? I know, in some of the Venus teachings. It is around, so sorry, I'm just looking through the library real quick. And this will have it in here somewhere, I believe. Just give me a moment. I don't think I presented this bit in the class. Oh, wow. And it didn't make the final cut here. Drats. All right. Well, I'm not going to show it to you anyway. It's cool to see these crossings of this east point. Just thinking of another way I might be able to find this. Huh, it's funny, when I typed a thing that I thought might get me there, I'm getting all these presentations I built in 2020 and 2022. So no, those won't do. Bummer. Anyway, it's, on a chart, it just kind of looks like things are going back and forth or maybe around this circle, right? Well, that's the sun's path, but planets have their own paths. And the way that Venus is in Mercury, they're making this huge loop around the Aries point. And when Venus can join the sun, she was 8.5 degrees away by latitude. Mercury, not as much so, but still like a great distance from the sun. And then even Saturn, who keeps his nodes, those are the place where Saturn's path crosses the sun's path in the tropical signs of Cancer, North Node, and Capricorn, South Node, right? So at Aries, it's a place where Saturn's like furthest from the sun's path, right? Neptune's the one of the four who stays kind of closest to the solar track, which is kind of interesting. It's not in some ways because Neptune's always close, and Neptune's shape, Neptune's orbital path is next to Venus, the most circular of all of the planets. And there's something very just kind of like Venus, harmonic, beautiful in that, right? Some say that Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. It's an interesting source for contemplation there. But, Neptune is such a boundaryless being that it kind of feels like Neptune should be the planet that doesn't stay so close. PK, I'm looking at your statement there, and there's one word that's throwing me off. The second to last word, I think it's meant to be autumnal. You know what? Let's go there another time. So, Saturn and Neptune. For years now, in astrological council, and at least in the last couple years, right? Let me get the charts back on the screen. Let's go like way back to Neptune entering Pisces. All right, so like this coming crossing, there were 3. Neptune first came into Pisces on April 4th, 2011, and then went retrograde and back into Aquarius on August 4th, 2011, and then stationing direct for the last time in Aquarius. Neptune then crossed into Pisces on February 3rd, 2012, right? Chiron was there. Interesting to see Venus was there at the time as well. And we've been in this Pisces Neptune thing since like 2012. Now, modern astrology associates the sign of Pisces with the planet Neptune, right? Traditionally, it's Jupiter's realm, just as Aquarius traditionally is Saturn's realm, and Scorpio traditionally is Mars's realm, not Pluto's. Aquarius, Saturn, not Uranus. Pisces, Jupiter, not Neptune. That being said, even for those of us who prefer traditional dispositorship like that, but also honor the invisible planets, those not visible to the naked eye, like Neptune, we have to admit there's something very Piscean about Neptune and something very Neptunian about Pisces, right? In this kind of boundaryness and merging with the infinite and such. So a thing I'm interested in is, it was right around this time when I found my sobriety. It was January 6th, 2012. It's been a minute now. But I was still drunk on the wonder of it all. And certainly one of the things that was a main theme in my life in 2012, and for many of those of us who identify as mystics, was this, big 2012 thing, this, ending of the long count calendar from the Mayan tradition, if we did the math right. And there's some argument there. And of course, the TV screens were telling us to freak out. In fact, there was that big major motion picture of 2012. And so that year I drive by these billboards of, you were warned, with like the gigantic Christ in Rio de Janeiro and the flood coming, or an image of the flood and, the Himalayas or New York getting taken over by this gigantic wave. And, that kind of fear stream about what the Mayan long count ending of the 13th Baktun might be, and the sensationalism of fear. And speaking of Pisces, the beautiful John Major Jenkins, who wrote a book that I recommend you all read. He actually wrote many that I would say that about, but Galactic Alignment is, I would suggest, a must read for any star student and mystic and living in this turning of the ages. John was a card-carrying Pisces in many ways, and one thing that really hurt him, and I know this from personal conversations we had shortly before he sadly left this earth at a very young age, was it just hurt him so much that he'd be interviewed about his work, and like the Maya Cosmogenesis, which is the title of his book that preceded Galactic Alignment, which is just amazing. And be interviewed about what this long count thing was. I think John really cracked the code astronomically, and that it's all about Earth's rotational axis, and therefore the tropical zodiac and the cardinal directions and the cusps of the cardinal signs, Cancer and Taurus and Capricorn, and how the Capricorn point, the south point, has been precessing through galactic center and a place, kind of the dark rift of the Milky Way, that John associated with Xibalba Bay, which is the underworld from the Mayan tradition, and how this would be the time where one Hunahpu, who was like the sun, would be reborn. Hunahpu's child was one, right? Anyway, I need to get back into my Maya myth. And yeah, John just really, I think, detailed this so beautifully, and he didn't feel that it was going to be some end of the world, but anytime he would do this interview for whatever, Ancient Aliens, History Channel, Discovery, whatever it was, they would always just clip and his bits and move things around and just make it sound like he was saying it was the end of the world. And that's what they would do with everyone. Some people were just saying that, right? But we really had, in that sense, for those of us who were tuning in, this kind of disillusion and this what is time, and why are there so many different ways to keep time? I was there in a huge way, and I didn't know what would go down. I did decide to make this a very important time in my life. I was at Machu Picchu for that December 21st, 2012 moment. So I got to experience summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. And I will say that my old life died and my new life began. I was like an engineer, and shortly thereafter, practicing astrologer, right before I had come to this craft in 2012. So, everything changed for me. I know I'm not the only one. And just as, January 1st is just kind of a date on a calendar page, when we bring our consciousness and see that as the beginning of the new year, and the old year gets left behind, right? Then it's very meaningful. And the more people who bring their consciousness to a thing, perhaps the more meaning it can provide. And 2012 for many of us was, an opportunity to begin again. And I will say I'm one of many that I know who lived that. So just reflecting on, Neptune crossing from Aquarius into Pisces in 2011 and finally committing to Pisces in 2012, and how important that time was in my life. Good thing I got sober, because I think Neptune and Pisces could help us all get super drunk. And I think we all have been through the illusions, maybe of reality, but certainly of, the news. And I'm very interested in what this Neptune into Aries is going to mean. And, it's an interesting truth that in astrology, we just can't get a clean experiment. You know what I mean? It's like, the one thing if Neptune just moved from Pisces to Aries, but that this is happening as Mercury and Venus dance across the east point, as the lunar node dances across the east point, which brings the greatest tides of the 18.6 year cycle. And significant, interesting kind of climate cycle contributions. That Saturn's coming through as well, I think, is intriguing. And as soon as I say Saturn, I'm like, oh yeah, I just remember what I was going to do. You don't want to lead with Neptune. So here's Neptune, like, kind of fully committing to Pisces in 2012. Look at where Saturn was at that time. here at the last degree of Libra. I'm going to like jump ahead, although I was kind of doing some interesting things. Well, let me put Saturn into Sagittarius. So that's here in 2014. And even here, I remember spending a good amount of time with people who were having Neptune transits in these kind of early degrees of mutable signs, especially Neptune was conjoining their natal Pisces planets or squaring their natal Gemini or Sagittarius planets and posing their natal Virgo planets, you know. And then Saturn would come in and either conjoin or oppose or square those same points shortly thereafter. And I was like, okay, you get the Neptune and then you get the Saturn. And I was really in a study just through what people were experiencing in their life of what that would look like, Neptune first and then Saturn. And we've really had it in recent times because with Saturn coming into Pisces, which happened here March 7th, 2023. And then Saturn stayed in Pisces, okay? We get Saturn kind of coming through the sign where Neptune has been all the way since 2012, right? And Saturn won't catch up to Neptune, even though, you know, he follows Neptune into Aries, but this retrograde just, I don't know, 15 arc minutes, 13 arc minutes away from a conjunction is far enough that Saturn will go back into Pisces before Neptune does. Saturn will station direct before Neptune does. And then finally, Saturn and Neptune will have their exact conjunction in 2026 here on February 20th at 0 degrees and 45 arc minutes of Aries. Okay. But I mean, they'll just kind of be traveling together a ton. Not surprising, by the way, to see Mercury and Venus in Pisces at that time because they always stay close to the sun. But unlike now, they won't do these retrograde things. Well, maybe Mercury does. Venus will not, about the east point. So let me just look at Mercury's. Yeah, Mercury's going to retrograde, and I should know better, in Pisces, and then go direct and then cross over, okay? So I've been finding it useful to share this metaphor with folks during these last years who have been experiencing significant Neptune transits followed by significant Saturn transits, to speak about kind of getting lost at sea and then finding new land, new ground beneath the feet. I've been finding it as a convenient metaphor to use because for most folks who are having these significant initiations of Neptune first and then Saturn, it rang true to their experience. And it wasn't always me saying, hey, this is happening, and them saying, yeah, this is what's going on. Oftentimes they'd be saying this thing in their life, it's like this. And oftentimes they'd be saying, okay, I'm going through Neptune. Now, they didn't say it that way, right? But what does that mean to go through Neptune? I'm appreciating this from Ellie, who says, I'm so grateful to have had Neptune moving through my first house. It really helped me to understand who Pisces is and who am I. Yeah, right on. And as we should. Now, if Capricorn rising, it might feel quite different. I really appreciate many of the teachings of my friend Jason Hawley, who's a wonderful astrologer, but he compares the Neptune transit to Odysseus lost at sea in the Odyssey, right? 10 years to get back home. That's fun. Ellie says, I meant Saturn, right? But both. Yeah, well, I need to purchase and listen to the lecture that Jason Hawley gave about the many stages of the Odyssey showing up in the many stages of a Neptune initiation. He presented that, I believe, at the ESAR conference a few years back in Colorado, and I fell asleep on his lap But you know what? Like if somebody's giving a talk about Pisces and about Neptune, I feel like the greatest honor you can bestow upon them is to fall asleep. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if Jason would agree, but I'm sure I experienced, though I missed the beautiful imagery on the screen, that the imagery that I was painting in my inner eye while sleeping sure helped me really tune into the energetic intent of Jason's transmission in a powerful way. And I should go back and watch it again. So if you're interested in doing so, by the way, I imagine you can purchase a recording of that talk through Jason Hawley's website or maybe through ESAR, or I'm not sure. If anybody wants to hunt for Jason Hawley Neptune Transit Odyssey and find out where to purchase that, please put it in the chat and I'll share it around. So the metaphor I've been using, I mean, I've been saying this with Neptune for a long time and reminding myself of this truth as I'm going through Neptune too. Well, let me leave me out of it. But it's like, look, you lost at sea. And that doesn't have to be a terrible thing. The fog has come. You can't read the stars. And you can kind of white knuckle grip the helm, or you can let it go and have a little faith. There's a really important moment in the movie Castaway where he casts his oars away and just like, hey, if I'm going to survive, it's because of something that I can't see with my eyes. And so he is, and does. And Neptune can be like that. You know, it's not the time when you lean into your 5-10 year plan. It's like, let go, let it flow, and you're going to end up where you're meant to be. And it's been helpful, I feel, in the recent years for Neptune to kind of bring the fog, to be followed quickly thereafter by Saturn, who in a way brings the new land, right? So the metaphor has been, all right, here we are, we're out in the great ocean, the fog comes in, we don't know where we're going, stop needing to know, let it flow, and this fog and this storm is going to blow you right to where you need to be, right? And that Saturn would then be that new land, that new ground beneath our feet. Now, look, Saturn transits aren't always easy, right? And Saturn and Neptune are as opposite as Saturn and Uranus are, but in different ways, right? Saturn and Uranus, because Saturn's tower and Uranus is the lightning bolt that strikes it, you know, form and tradition and maybe even the rules and revolution, or at least innovation. Saturn and Neptune are opposite in a very different way, right? Saturn is like earth and form and boundaries, and Neptune is formlessness and boundarylessness. So even this opportunity of practicing the Saturn moving through Pisces, there's in a sense like, okay, like what are the rules of the dream world, right? Like, what are the boundaries of the water? And the answer is this teacup. Well, no, it's about to be, but I got to do some things, right? So we take the tea from this beautiful pot created by an amazing Japanese master, and we pour it into this pot, and we have it overfilled, so we drip a little bit, which is good because we're talking about boundarylessness, right? And this is the Kung Fu. You always use two pots, right? And this one comes into the cup. Now, what would happen if I just poured the water? It's heavy to go here, but it's interesting in the symbolism. And I'm actually will still be heavy, but I'm excited to go here on Sunday with many of you stars of Constellations. But I'm sure some of you saw that part of the way that this 7.7 magnitude earthquake was experienced in Myanmar and other places nearby was this weird happening of these like rooftop pools overflowing, right? And just completely draining as the building was shaking in the earthquake, and the rooftop pool water just came out. Now it spilled some people, some swimmers with it. And as I was speaking with Koa about this, and maybe I shouldn't because he's 9, almost 10, but I did. He said, well, at least they're like in the water, and so they could, like, when the water hits the ground, they could just like swim away. And then I brought him over to the sink, and I shouldn't laugh, but I just giggle at the way that I'm always inclined to teach. And I took a glass of water and I poured it into the sink and asked him to observe what happened with the water, right? Because without like the cup or the pool to hold the water, right, without that form, and we can feel the Saturn in that, right? Saturn is associated with the earth element, which is the most fixed, gross, right, material, the cold and dry, and it holds the water, the cold and wet, right? And then the water, of course, will take the form of the earth that embraces it. Yes. So without that water, right, or sorry, without that earth, like the water just has no boundaries and it just expands forever, right? Um, so I've kind of found this metaphor to be helpful, whether people in kind of recent years, it was like they're in this Neptune transit and then Saturn comes in like right after, even concurrently. Neptune transits, because Neptune moves more slowly than Saturn, tend to be longer than Saturn transits. It depends on how you do your astrology. But for me, for sure, Neptune's like 20 months and Saturn's about 9. Um, and so I've been wondering about the new metaphor, because soon, like starting in 2026, when Saturn and Neptune conjoin, and those two don't conjoin that often. Saturn last conjoined Neptune in 1989 3 times in the sign of Capricorn. And, interesting thing there, especially for modern astrologers who associate Capricorn with Saturn and Neptune, or Pisces with Neptune. It's like, if it's Capricorn, then it's kind of Pisces, and it's not. It's going to be Aries, right? So what will it be to get Saturn first and then Neptune? Well, let's talk about now, because what's happening now, like I just had this reading with a woman, her son, she's Leo rising, and her son, and I'm not her child, but the sun in her chart was at like a 0.5 degree of Aries, 26 arc minutes, something like that, right? And so Neptune's like there now, and here comes Saturn. And for me, it's not like as planets are within like 2 degrees of orb. That's what some astrologers do. I was taught, and I prefer this approach. Like, you get this period of time. Neptune will either transit a point 5 times or 3. I like to be an equal opportunity astrologer. So if it's only 3, I look at where Neptune stations, like closest to the point considered. Is it the retrograde station before the first of the 3 alignments, or is it the direct station after the last of the 3 alignments? Like, if you look at those points and consider the 3 alignments, you get a time for the initiation that's similar to the timing of Neptune crossing a point 5 times. That's how I work with Pluto as well. With Saturn, I do too, because with Saturn, it either passes once or 3 times, depending on the retrograde loops. So yeah, I was just sitting with this client, and she's been in Neptune. She's applying for like a real job. I guess those things exist. I'm kidding. And she went through this interview process, 14 interviews for the same job. So it's like, oh my God, what? And then they kind of felt like they were like stringing her along a little bit, and then it just didn't happen, or maybe. And then she found out from somebody like this company's like in a hiring freeze right now. So why are they interviewing anyone? And of course, the answer would be like when they're free to, hire people, then they've already interviewed the folks or whatever, But she kind of left a job or was laid off through this very kind of illusional thing, and that was like she's been in just Neptune, and now Saturn comes, and I and that was like at a different point of her chart that was more about her work. But now it's coming to the sun, who for Leo rising beings is said to be, representative of them. And so it's going to be Neptune, and then it's going to be Saturn, but they'll be happening at the same time. And we spoke about the fog and releasing the wheel, the helm, and just letting it take you to the new land, and then the new land coming in. And so I told her, I was like, yeah, I've been wondering like what the new metaphor is. And it's like, maybe it'll come in during this session. And it did. And what it was like, here's Neptune and Saturn right away. And it's Oasis or Mirage. So I grew up in the desert, and the Mirage is this really interesting thing, right? When you're just out and there's just no water anywhere, and on the horizon there appears to be, right? And it's the worst. Sometimes, like if you're driving a long trip through the desert, which would be a lot better than camelback or walking, if you get there, right? You're just in the middle of nowhere, and it's hot and it's dry and it's desolate, and it kind of has, fiery Aries vibe, right? And sometimes that mirage is not a mirage at all, and you see a thing on the horizon, and it doesn't retreat just as fast as you approach, but it stays right there, and it's there for you to get closer and closer and closer to, until you're finally there, and there's palm trees and water, the Oasis. Thinking of this like particular place in Southern California right now as I say that, where it's just like your Mojave, and then it's like, wow, like what a strange spot of this beautiful, cool, wet, drinkable water, which is so necessary for life and our survival, just in the middle of this arid, deadly desert, And looking for this metaphor that would be kind of less of just have faith in the fog, and then if you can release your need to steer, you will be steered to where you need to be, and there will be new ground beneath your feet. It's like, well, what if these things are happening kind of simultaneously? And I just realized it, and we'll see. I'm very interested to see how this plays out for people, especially for people with planets at the first degree of the cardinal signs. I was just looking at my chart. I'm not one of them. Oh God, shit, I am. Right, Mars. Anyway, sorry. So I guess just watch me. But what about you? And I'll be really interested. I mean, I'm so honored to actually learn this craft through sitting with amazing, awakening, awarening people like you, who are telling story and sharing, from their heart about what's happening for them, what they're going through, what's happening to them, for them, the whole thing. And, then I get to learn how astrology works anecdotally. It's not just like, oh, memorize these rules and, it's just math. So I'm interested in seeing if it plays this way for folks that like Neptune will bring the Oasis, but what if it's actually a mirage? And I think the test will actually be it is an Oasis, but you think it's a mirage because you've gotten to so many fake Oases before. Oases? Oasis says? Neptune would not care. Saturn might prefer correct language and grammar. Um, it is an oasis. The test will be releasing this need for it to be a mirage because we've been thirsty for so damn long. Time will tell. We're afraid that when we drink the water, we're actually just in the state of confusion, delusion. It's an illusion, and we're actually going to be choking on hot sand. But there's water there, my friends. Fill your cup. Thanks for filling mine. The presence of your presence are the most amazing gifts. Please give the show a like, subscribe to the channel, support your local astronaut. You can book a session or purchase a soul song at GeminiBrett.com. I said it was going to end yesterday, but you know what? Let's keep it up. We're still in the eclipse season as far as I would say, at least until the full moon coming. GeminiBrett.com/shadow will take you to a super secret special menu where you could book a 60-minute session with me for $108 if you like. For those of you who have played with Shadow and Light might know why 108. Very important sun, moon, earth number that. And if you've already used that, you can use it again, by the way. I'm booked out for a little bit, so we won't be talking about this particular eclipse event in real time, unless you are in Constellations. So again, GeminiBrett.com/constellations to know about that. For those of you who are, we're meeting Sunday, not Saturday this week, and I really intend for it to be a community thing. I always say that, and then I talk forever. It's not going to happen this time. In fact, I'm not going to mute anybody. Right at the beginning, we're all going to be together. We're going to look at the eclipse chart together. And those who want to share personal stories, experiences, we're going to look at charts together. And as a team, hold space and time. So that's this Sunday at 9 a.m. Again, you can join Constellations for only $16 a month. Or $160 for the year. GeminiBrett.com/constellations to learn more about that. And if you join, hopefully you're free at 9 a.m. Pacific time this Sunday for an eclipse journey with an amazing community of very wise, beautiful, caring, loving, empathic beings. Very happy that so many of you have aligned your star with ours. All right. So until next week, or for those of you in the houses course, tomorrow and Saturday, and for those of you Constellation Sunday, this is your friendly astronaut, Gemini Brett, signing off. I got an Oasis to go meet. See you in space, friends.